Thanks so much. It's really a pleasure to be here and to get a chance to share a little bit with you today about crucial conversations. And specifically, we're going to talk about sellouts. Have you ever sold out? You remember a time when you've sold out? Or maybe you really don't understand the term. So put yourself in this person's position. I'm going to walk you through something, and I'm going to ask you what your reaction might be. Let's say that you've been asked by your company to do a major presentation at a national convention. And you've made all your preparations, you've flown in a day early, you've got everything ready. You get up that morning and you're making some fine tuning, and you look at the clock and you realize that this was the weekend of daylight savings and you forgot to change the clock. And you're already late. So you quickly gather your stuff together, head out the door, across the street into the convention center, and there across the hallway is your elevator. You make a beeline for the elevator, you turn around, you hit the 11th floor, the door isn't closing, and across the lobby you see this man kind of struggling. And he's carrying some boxes, and he's coming towards your elevator, and you have a decision to make. And you reach down and you hit the button, and the door closes just as he gets there, leaving him outside. Now, as the elevator is ascending, let me ask you a question. What's going through your head? What story are you telling to justify what just took place? Well, after all, there are 5 other elevators out here, and, this is really important. This could eventually affect his life. Maybe you even go to the extent to say, I'm such an expert in cardiovascular awareness that I could tell that this gentleman was out of his target heart zone and he needed to set those boxes down, so I was really doing him a favor. What are we doing? We've sold out. We knew it was the right thing to help this person, and we didn't do it. And in order to make myself feel better, I start justifying this with what we call victim, villain, and helpless mentality. Now, the interesting thing is this. Whenever you sell out, you've got 2 options, and only 2 options. You can either admit to your sellouts, I really should have held the door for that guy. I'm going to do that next time. Or you can begin to justify your sellouts by using victim, villain, and helpless stories. Now, the interesting thing is, if you don't do the first, if you don't admit that you've sold out, you will do the second. And the interesting thing is, in order to change the story, you have to acknowledge that you had a role. That door didn't close all by itself. No, I had a role. I actually punched the button. But I can never figure out those greater than, less than, is this closing? See how I tell the story so quickly and so easily? It's interesting. Now, the interesting thing also is this. The bigger the sellout, the bigger the story, and the more tightly I cling to that story rather than admitting that maybe there was something else that I could have done. Well, sellouts can be small things as well, and I'd like you to put yourself in a position here of kind of critiquing yourself. Think about your life over the last couple of weeks, maybe even the last month, and ask yourself if you have sold out on any of these. Let's say you believe that you should help someone, but you don't. Now, you don't have to raise your hand, okay? 2, you think you should apologize, but you keep putting it off. I know I should apologize to that person. Number 3, you see a big problem with a plan that somebody is proposing in a meeting in your organization, and you think you ought to stand up and say something about it because you see some built-in problems, but you don't. Or maybe you fail to complete an assignment on time, but nobody's mentioned it. No one says anything. You think you ought to say something, but you don't. And then you have information that a coworker could use, but you know what? I don't like that coworker, and I don't give them that information. Can you identify with any of these sellouts? Because sellouts can be even small things. Now, the interesting thing is this. We ask, why do we tell stories? Well, the truth is that the purpose of victim, villain, and helpless stories is to help us justify our sellouts or our lack of results. You ever made a New Year's resolution? Yeah, I'm going to lose a few pounds, I'm going to do this. And about a month goes by and people say, well, how's the program going? And you're saying, well, I've been a little busy and I've got all of these reasons to justify why I don't have those results. And this starts at a very young age. I have been blessed with 6 grandchildren, 5 boys and 1 girl. And none of my grandkids have ever been anyone, for some reason, who writes on walls. It's just never been part of their, kind of process of growing up. But my daughter called the other day and said that she was putting Braden, my 3-year-old grandson, down to bed and was putting him in the bunk bed for a nap, and she looked up and there was this mural on the wall. And she looked at him and she said, Braden, who did that? And he looked at her and he thought for a second and he said, maybe Sister Bryn? And she said, no, I think Sister Bryn at the age of 1 probably couldn't do that. And he thought for a second and he said, maybe Daddy? She says, no, I don't think Daddy is into writing on the walls, and you know that we have a rule that we don't write on walls. And then his eyes grew very big and he played his trump card and he said, maybe God? Isn't it interesting? It starts at a very young age. We tend to justify ourselves with victim, villain, and helpless mentality.